distinguished delegates, good evening. Let me first thank the organizers to have given me the opportunity to share my experiences, share my thought on how we all have progressed in various fields of renewable energy within the country and the way forward, few challenges, how to overcome that. When all this thing was being discussed or was being delivered by my previous speakers, my thought goes to way back of October 1973, the first oil shock. The Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries have put an embargo on US and European countries that has resulted 400% increase in oil prices. And that was basically the triggering point when the word energy independence came, and world over, people have seen the vulnerability of concentration of the fossil fuel at a particular location or area, and how the economy could be disturbed or affected by that. Parallelly, in 1972, at Stockholm, people were also discussing about the effect of large-scale use of fossil fuel to our environment. In a sense, during last 50 years, the efforts were going in both the direction. International community have thought how to overcome the challenge of environmental challenge, and for that, naturally, the first step was to go back to history and look at whether we can survive with natural sources of energy, which at one point of time were conventional sources of energy. Dr. Bandyopadhyay had already mentioned about invention by James Watt, followed by internal combustion engine by Rudolf Diesel. And the diesel, what we are accustomed to today, was not the diesel at that time. It was the vegetable oil. So in a sense, the renewable, what we are talking of today, were conventional fuels some 200 years back. So now we have to reinvent the wheel. And reinvent the wheel in a sense that during these 200 years, we have become accustomed to certain lifestyle. The lifestyle of the sort that we just push the button and electricity, we see that the light is there. We just switch on the switch, we get the hot water. So we have become accustomed to an economy which has, to some extent, disturbed the entire environment, and we already have seen the impact of that. The fire, what we have seen in California recently, The impact on weather condition, we have already seen that the weather pattern, particularly in our country, has already shifted about 1 month. The rains, which used to be there, the monsoon current, which was there from mid-June, now has shifted to July. And in September, we see a lot of rains. We also have seen rains in Rajasthan. So, lot of impact of our fossil fuel based economy is already being seen. Even today, when we are in mid-February, we see that the temperature has gone to 30 degrees Celsius in Delhi itself. I remember our examination used to take place in the month of March, and we used to go by putting on sweaters during those days. Now, in February at daytime, even we feel sometimes quite sweating and all that. So that's the impact. So taking all this thing into consideration, the world over, the renewable energy movement started. The scientists, the policymakers, all have started working on development of renewable sources of energy to harness the huge potential of solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, and hydro. And hydro also, not the type of hydro we were used to, like the large hydro, but also to harness the small hydropower plants. So that was the journey. Our country also started the same thing during the same period, sometimes in 1973. And if you look at the historical development, then the 70s and 80s were practically the development of technology and demonstration. But from 90 onward, when these climate negotiations were parallelly started, the United Nations Environmental Program, which launched, that was way back in 1972. But yes, the GEEF facility, the UNFCCC, and all those, the first report of IPCC, that all have triggered or accelerated the process of deployment of large-scale renewable energy projects. So at one point, Dr. Madhupadhyay was mentioning decentralized, but at one point of time when we have been telling that the energy could be produced at a place where it is required, now we have customized our renewable energy projects to large solar projects the same way as the fossil fuel based projects are there. Means you have ultra mega thermal power station. Similarly, we have ultra mega solar power plant, ultra mega wind parks, and now we are thinking to go to offshore. So that's how the development have taken place. The real development means the commercialization process, which started in 1991 in India, with the wind sector have taken the lead. But in solar sector, the real lead had come with the announcement of National Action Plan on Climate Change way back in 2008. That was the first developmental model, sustainable developmental models India had suo motu announced to, as a responsible country, to address the climate aspect. And National Solar Mission and National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, they became the first two missions addressing the energy aspect. Because energy in any case is the major culprit in climate, deterioration of our climate. So the thing what we say, the GHG emission, to how to reduce the carbon footprint. So that was the beginning. And though the National Solar Mission, if we look at the NAPCC document written there, the solar was a generic word with all the renewables were part of that solar, but the monitorable or the deliverable was 20 gigawatt solar, grid connected solar power generation capacity by 2022. And it was thought even at that time whether it would be possible. We all were doubting the capacity of ourselves, whether it would be possible to achieve that. But we could achieve that number in 2017 itself. We were thinking to achieve the tariff parity by 2022 from solar. We could get it in 2017. Now even it's more competitive to have a solar power plant or the wind park power generation capacity than to have a thermal power station. So that's how the development have taken place. The major boost again came in 2015 at the Paris Convention, when we again have made a promise to have 175 gigawatt renewable energy power generation capacity by 2022, with 100 gigawatt coming from solar. Of course, a bit late, but I am happy to announce that we already have achieved it, that 100 gigawatt today. And now we are going ahead to have 280 gigawatt solar power generation capacity by 2030 as part of our overall goal of achieving 500 gigawatt non-fossil fuel based power generation capacity. And in that process, now the challenge is there. We already have announced another around 240 gigawatt bidding, and all those, the pipeline is already there. And we are sure that we will be able to achieve that target also within time. But the challenge is there. The challenge is that our Dr. Bandyopadhyay had briefly mentioned about that. The overall informed power generation capacity from wind and solar will be something around 420 gigawatt by that time. And our total power generation capacity would be something around 700 or 750 gigawatt at that time. So it's almost 1:1, means the thermal generation capacity and coal-based thermal power generation capacity and the renewable power generation capacity. But the challenge, as Dr. Bandyopadhyay had already mentioned, 24/7, providing electricity 24/7 by renewable energy. So there is huge challenge. Informed power is there. What to do? We will be having, because the pattern, the way the solar generation will take place, because now the capacity will be something around 280 gigawatt. We will have something around 250 gigawatt power generation, maybe at around 12 o'clock or to 2 o'clock. And we will also have around 200 gigawatt thermal power capacity, which will in a way provide us to serve to our base load. So that surplus power, because our demand is not increasing the way it's projected. So there will be the time when we will be having surplus power. What to do with that? So in that context, actually, all the things are being planned. We have been talking about hydrogen, and that's why specifically we are mentioning to have green hydrogen. Means whatever the surplus power available at that time can be used to produce hydrogen through electrolysis process, and that hydrogen can be used for multiple purpose, because now it's a fuel which can be stored, that can be used to generate electricity by using fossil fuel cell, that can be used to run our transport system, that can be used for thermal power. So all those things could be done. Then there is another challenge of meeting the peak load. The way the solar generation takes place, we assume that it's a very smooth curve, but in reality, it is not like that. It's something like this. And if it is like this, how will it impact our distribution system? Whether the surplus at particular time, do we have the capacity to transmit that additional power? So the grid congestion will also be a challenge. And then the way our load curve changes within 24 hours profile, our peak sometimes comes to be something around, means at around 6 o'clock. Solar is not there, it dips down at 4 o'clock. So how can we shift it from there? So number of technologies now being talked of. It may be compressed air, it may be battery energy storage, it may be pumped hydro, it may be even liquid air. So all those options are open. And even in the battery energy storage, there are a number of technologies. For a specific application, you have to adopt a particular technology. So these all things, and the control system. So one part is the chemistry of the battery storage, the another part is the control system. That's the electronics and artificial intelligence, or the those type of things. So all these things are necessary to work on, for which our researchers, scientists, industry all have to come forward and adopt and show a proper model to us. So all these are the goals. The challenge is now, when we have something around 160, 170 gigawatt capacity from renewable, including around 15 gigawatt coming from biomass and small hydro. But remaining, the solar and wind is something around 149 gigawatt. So that's what we are still less than 100, means targeted 175 gigawatt. But we have to go to something around 420 gigawatt. So this gap means we should have something around 50 gigawatt per annum installed capacity coming from solar and wind in the next 5 years. So for all that, we have to work. Of course, a lot of policy initiatives are being taken by the government. That's basically one aspect of having the capacity addition. But there is another aspect also. The another aspect is the supply chain. Do we have the manufacturing capacity for all that? And that's why the PLI and all those measures are being taken. So everything as a policy is being thought of. The electric vehicle we have been talking, the hydrogen, this is the part of overall scenario or overall planning of our achieving non-fossil fuel based power generation capacity. So it's time for all the industry and scientists, all those to come forward and work to achieve the goal 500 gigawatt not fossil fuel capacity by 2030. And not only that, to also achieve net zero emission by 2070, not only in 2000, but much before that, and probably within our Amrit Kal, that is by 2047. So with these words, thanks a lot.